one of the best things about this conference is the variety of topics. So Steve Rhyne is going to talk to us about 3D visualization in courtroom. So I'll let Steve do a little bit more of a bio on himself, but he's been with Kittleson and Associate doing visualization for communication for about 20 years. So we're really interested to see how they've applied this in the courtroom. Steve?
Thank you. So this topic is somewhat unusual for something that I've presented on. I've presented a lot of presentations related to visual communication in our transportation planning and engineering discipline. This one here, 3D visualization in a courtroom, was presented to me to work on as the visualization expert. And so this was a unique opportunity, and my reaction was, oh yeah, I want to get in on this one. This will be a fun one. However, I didn't know what are some of the challenges in a courtroom. There's a lot of questioning of your information, and so there's a lot of back and forth. Now, fortunately, I wasn't the one that had to be in the courtroom. The project manager, who was the expert witness for the client, was the one that had to deal with this stuff, but of course he relied on me to provide details, back-end details on this stuff. So I'd like to just share this story, the benefits of 3D visualization in a courtroom, but also some of the challenges that we encountered. Just so I know I'm pushing the right buttons here. There we go. So just to give you a little background on this case, it was a dispute between two landowners. There was a trucking company and then a landowner, which was a developer that wanted to develop on this land. However, in that orange space, there's a designated easement. So our client was the trucking company. And so his argument was, hey, you can't develop in that easement, because that easement's been set aside for the truck traffic that enters the property, and it's going to create a problem for my business, and it's going to create a safety issue. So that's just some high-level background on the case. The other part that you really can't see, except on the left, you'll see this ramp. So freeway, when trucks are traveling freeways, they actually have a directory of all the truck stops, and it scores the truck stops, it shows the amenities. There's a lot of details that go into it, that these truckers are going to be making decisions whether they stop there or not. And so he was concerned that if the line of sight, it was going to be difficult for these trucks, that these guys would just pass this interchange and then continue on to the next truck stop. So that's what his argument was. So us being hired, we were to assess this proposed development. There are 5 locations on this site. A and B are pump stations for these trucks. C is a DEF station, which is diesel emission fluid, I think. D is the weigh station, and then E is obviously the parking. So just to give you a little bit of background, on average, we looked at in-truck video, and on average we'd see half a dozen trucks migrating and moving in and out of this easement. So there's quite a bit of traffic. So our approach was, okay, we wanted to look at the visibility of destinations. We wanted to look at the current circulation. We wanted to see travel time, how much time it took to traverse this area. And then obviously we wanted to look at conflict and some property circulation issues. The truck types play a big role. So WB67 trucks were the most popular trucks. On average, 518 trucks in a 24-hour period. That's a lot of vehicles for trucks. And then 1 to 2 was the WB109, so it's a dual trailer truck, and it's quite large. So our analysis was, one, we utilized aerial imagery, a lot of AutoCAD. We looked at the proposed land use and integrated it with the existing. We utilized AutoTurn. We looked at a lot of video footage, and that included drone. So our client was, this is so funny, our client decided, hey, I'm going to buy a drone. Didn't know that there was a Part 107 license that comes with that, and just sent it up and didn't realize he was pretty close to an airport. So, but yeah, we got video footage, and then obviously the 3D visualization. So this gives you a snapshot of using the AutoTurn to look at what these trucks have to do in order to reach these different areas. And you can see they cover a large area, especially if, you know, with a dual trailer, it's going to create a big swing. And so we did some existing conditions analysis using AutoTurn to see, you know, just to get that baseline. We also looked at line of sight. So all those areas with a partial for area B were very clear. There's no obstructions. So then when we integrated it into the proposed land development, that we lost 3 of those. Now, keep in mind, this is looking at 2D. We're making some assumptions, but so then we look at pull it in 3D. So this is where we started to get into the 3D visualization. And that's where I came in to create these 3D models. One of the things that we wanted to always consider, and this is part of the learning experience in court cases, is everything gets questioned. The opposing side is going to always debate and try to throw something out. So this is where, if you go back to those last slides I showed using the AutoTurn, these are standard software that's being used, okay? So using that type of engineering software helps your story, your case, to give validity to it. In the case of 3D modeling, we didn't want to over texturize, we didn't want to create Pixar, because Pixar is not real. And so we don't want people, or in the case this, because this was a civil court case, there was no jury, it was present the case in front of a judge, that we didn't want the opportunity for the opposing side to say, you know what, this isn't real, this can't be used. So we had to take a lot of that into consideration. So here, a lot of things were basic shapes. We did have detail with the vehicles, but you can see the buildings themselves were pretty much generic, nothing outlandish in detail or texture. But mostly the point was to say, you can see these buildings, okay? So then we throw in the proposed development. We had information about building height, but you see there's no facade to it. Again, we don't want to put too much detail. We threw in some vehicles because we had the parking, so nothing was unreasonable here. And so it definitely was accepted as a piece that can be used in our case. There was no issue. But as you can see, you're going to take away 4 of those objects, those line of sight views. So from a trucker standpoint, truckers don't like to go backwards. They just want to go forward. So a trucker seeing this would not know where to travel to get to the 4 of those 5 issues. So this was the first one where it was a really good case that this is going to be an issue. So moving forward, again, taking that AutoTurn of the existing conditions, overlaying it with the proposed conditions, you can see, again, how much area it covers. Now, having to navigate trucks around that's going to be rather challenging. So that's when we went into the analysis of the proposed site. How do these trucks navigate? So we came up with 3 different types of conflicts. There was a property conflict. If you noticed in the lower right-hand corner, this is owned by Derek. Trucks are not allowed to enter that property. And in order for a truck to make that movement to get to like area D or B, would actually have to encroach on that property. There was physical conflicts. There's really only one. It was down on the south end. You can see that in order for a truck for the truck not to enter oncoming traffic, would clip that curb. But there were 4 overlapping path conflicts, which is a huge problem because of the line of sight, having vehicles, that many vehicles, half a dozen or so at one point trying to navigate this is going to create an issue. And so this is where the animation would come in to illustrate that. So the thing is this is an animation. Because of my excitement of this project, I was like, hey, let's do some VR. We can, you know what we can do? We can place these kind of 360 positions, and that the judge could sit there and look at all these different spots. Well, the other side had an issue with that, and they felt that because those were predefined locations and that the user couldn't freely navigate, that would kind of, it would change the bias, I guess. So animations were accepted because it was a high-level view. We weren't navigating a fixed position, a fixed perspective that was being predefined. So this is an animation of existing condition. Now, we only wanted to show one vehicle, and it was just to establish this is what this looks like now with the existing land use and a vehicle. The one thing that I had learned early on in my career with doing animations is details are very, very important, and details can really kill your visualization as to its accuracy. If you notice the truck when it pulled in, and you may have seen this in other animations and visualizations, when the truck pulls and starts to turn, it pivots from the center. So it looks like the whole thing is in Fast and Furious, and it's starting to do a drift around the corner. It's not articulating correctly. So for these vehicles, we had to actually articulate them correctly. And if in the animation world, it's called a bone structure, like your arm. You have a joint, it pivots, it bends. So we had to rig our trucks appropriately so that they articulated correctly. And using the auto turn information, if you recall, there was, a truck's turn is much different than a vehicle. It makes a big sweeping arc. The trailer wheels are turning a much tighter arc. So there's a lot of dynamics going on in the way a truck turns. And so we utilize that information with the articulation, you're setting the articulation of these trucks so that they would actually turn properly, and they presented the motion accurately in these animations. So now we created 13 different animations for all these different locations in a variety of scenarios. So this is one of them, and which is a conflict at the entrance. So you'll see that you have vehicles that are queued up, and that's the other thing too, is right now, or at the time, there's mostly trucks that are navigating this. Now that you have land use, you're gonna have other vehicles mixing in. So this is not even modeled correctly from the standpoint of how much additional traffic is gonna be added to this. But it was enough to say, look, if you have vehicles on the entrance, you're going to have issues of somebody who wants to try to navigate this. So here's this vehicle, he needs to get around. This red area is the no-fly zone. But you'll notice at the top, you had another vehicle up there at that station that is that possibility of, okay, we have two vehicles that need to cross paths, and that goes back to that auto turn showing one of the path conflicts. They cannot share the same space. So somebody has to back up, and to back up is a safety issue. If it was a WB109, it can't even make that turn to get to the pumps. It's not possible. And so to back up a dual trailer is even more challenging. So much like this entrance conflict I was describing, one of the things that we wanted to share with is it actually spills out off the site. There's a safety issue off the site. So this next animation shows that same vehicle, that truck, that needs to make a left turn but can't, and has another truck that backs up. And so now you have this stacking effect. And so this is a pretty high-speed corridor. So this in itself was just, there's a lot of high potential for safety issues here. So finally, the results, the judge ruled in favor of the truck stop. Our project manager said, she said it was just overwhelming for her to make a decision, and within a few days she had ruled in favor of the truck stop, so that this developer could not develop because there was just so many issues to come of it. She had expressed that the animation brought some realism to the scene versus, you know, having 2D plans and like the auto turn. And that was one of the things that I had learned through all this process is courtrooms are not very progressive. They like posters and 2D stuff. So here, when going into this, I thought I was going to have a field day. This was going to be a fun. It was fun, but I was hoping to do more for this from a VR perspective, which gets into, is there VR opportunity for the courtroom? I've used it numerous times for public outreach projects, planning and engineering projects. Yeah, the public loves this stuff, but at least for this case, it just wasn't ready yet. So I'm hoping, you know, there will be other opportunities that VR can be used in the courtroom, because a lot of cases can stem on first-person feeling. How did that person feel? However, I would say, thinking about this in the future for using VR, detail has to be there. You cannot lack the detail. Any flaws in your visualization is now going to put a question mark on it, and so we'll see. But fun project, interesting over the 20 years that this was the first time I got to do a project that had to do with a legal case. So yeah, thank you, and if you have any questions. Yeah.
That easement, was it a utility easement, or what was its purpose?
It was a legal agreement between the landowners there that this was going to be an easement, because the trucking company was the first land developer, I guess, that was there for years, a long time. And so it was a legal agreement that this would be set as an easement. But and you would have thought that legal document would have been enough, yeah. But it wasn't. And so it had to turn into this big kind of study over it. So, yeah. Yes?
You said that if you go to court with a rendering or an animation that's too detailed, the other side will try to throw it out. But would the opposite also be true if you show up with a building that's a green box, but the other side would say, you know, oh, that was nothing like a building?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the situation. And then in this case, we wanted to just focus on the vehicle movement. We knew that there's going to be buildings and some of the infrastructure, but we didn't want to overshadow the vehicle itself, the safety issues itself, and then make everything else with enough detail, but still drawn in the back. So it's it was something that we discussed during the process between the project manager, the lawyer, and myself. But it made sense at the time, you know. So yeah.
If this was a jury instead of a judge, would things change?
If this was a jury,
A jury instead of a judge, would you change your level of details and animations?
I need to ask Bull. No, you know, that's a good question. I don't know. I think we probably still would have done the same thing, just because I think, God, you know, you never know with a jury, I guess. You know.
Was there a difficulty if you were to able to use VR?
Oh, with VR?
Difficulty with using VR with the jury since you got a panel?
Well, so the one thing about the VR, so at the time we weren't doing VR with motion so that you could freely move. We would actually set waypoints, like a 360 view, and that's what the issue was. Is they felt that because we had to find that position versus allowing somebody to freely view at that ground level was, I guess, unfair. I can't remember the term they used. However, the high level view was broad enough that it was acceptable. So
Awesome, thank you so much.
thank you.